There are more and more couples these days struggling with ongoing arguments than, God, I've been doing this 45 years and I cannot remember since the beginning of COVID actually began, and it's continuing and it's continuing and it's getting really, really nasty. And I wanted to take a moment to give a couple explanations of how do couples get into this consistent arguing? What are the causes behind it? Why is it so hard to break it down? And then what do we do? What do we do once we get to the very, very end? David Essel here for 45 years, working as a counselor, executive coach, #1 best-selling author of 16 books. And we've got a brand new program I'll be doing more about called Look to Lift Others. It's a nonprofit, international grassroots movement to do exactly what we're saying. And that's all at the website, Look to Lift Others. Anyway, let's get back into this argument thing. So over the years, I've had so many couples that have come in and been in just consistent arguments, and after a period of time of working with them, I always say, let's start charting. Like, how many days is it? Do you guys get into an argument every 5 days, every 7 days, every 18 days, whatever it is? The very first response I get from almost every couple is, well, it's not that frequent. It's not that often. And then I say, well, I don't think you'd be in working with a counselor if it wasn't that frequent and awesome and often. And then they start laughing, and I say, I'm serious. Though you guys are here, there's been a lot of stuff going down that's not healthy. And I want to get to the bottom of it, the core of it. And there's 3 different things to look at of why it is that we argue on a regular basis, So let's take a look at them. Number 1, we were raised in a family of argumentative people. We were raised in a dominating family. We were raised in a family where someone took control by yelling, screaming, etc. So from 0 to 18, when you're raised in that environment, you just think it's normal. Well, when you get married, you scream at each other. And I'm being dead serious. The subconscious just packs in all of this stuff from childhood. It's a memory bank. And if you see your parents arguing over and over, or aunt and uncle, grandma, grandfather, next door neighbor, whoever you're in contact with a lot, it starts to seem normal. And so then when you get into a relationship and the other person may have been raised in a very similar relationship or childhood, which means now we are creating a trauma bond, and then it just turns into all kinds of hell, right? So number 1 is that you could have been raised in that environment. It's stuck in the subconscious. The subconscious is not logical. It just follows patterns. And so it says, well, this is what you do when you're married. That's one option. Number 2 is the power of the subconscious mind. And I'm going to get to the adrenaline addiction cycle in a second. The subconscious, once again, I said before, all it does is collect our patterns. So if we drink 6 glasses of wine every night and you do that for a while, you won't even have to think about it. You'll be sitting down and drinking 6 bottles of wine. You don't have to think at all. It'll just be a natural part of the way that you live. If you get up at 6 a.m. every morning to go to the gym and you've been doing it for years, after a while, you probably don't have to set your alarm clock, right? The subconscious gets into this, this is what he wants. This is what she wants. And it'll just become a natural part of your life. Now, here's where the split is. There's some things we do in a cyclical nature, which is really positive, really great. Then there are things we can do in a cyclical nature, which are really negative. And that's where we get into the arguments. So let's go back to the subconscious. The subconscious is taking in the data of you and your partner. And you get to every 5, 6, 7, 8 days, and then someone rolls their eyes and there's a huge fight. And then it calms down and you get back to it. Well, the subconscious is saying, hey, listen, this is what we've always done. We've been together for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. This is what we do. Let's just keep doing it. And until you work with a professional and they can explain the power of the subconscious mind and how to turn it around, we're just going to stay victims to our own patterns that we have fed to ourselves. No one's done this to us. We have accepted that arguing is part of our relationship, and we just carry on like it's a normal part of our day, even though it's not normal, it doesn't have to be, and it's unhealthy. That's 2. Number 3, this is where we get into science. It's really fascinating, the adrenaline addiction cycle. So every time you argue with your partner, of course, there's a release of adrenaline, one of the most powerful drugs in the world, for God's sake. And it gets released, and you're fighting and arguing and disagreeing, and you're proving your point, but not listening to hers. She's proving her point, not listening to yours, and it continues, right? The adrenaline is flowing. Let's say that it hasn't become a pattern yet. It happens maybe every 4 weeks, every 8 weeks, something like that. So it's just one of those things in life, right? But then all of a sudden we start to see it's going to start repeating more frequently. So maybe it starts off at once every couple months. Then it turns out to, once every 3 or 4 weeks. And then it turns out to once every 7 days. I've even had couples where I've had them do this exercise and it's every 4 days. And it's like clockwork, right? Why is that? Well, when you argue, adrenaline is released into the system, and you do it enough, and the body starts to crave that adrenaline rush. Just like the subconscious just follows a pattern. So after 6 days and you haven't argued, all of a sudden we get a little anxious and our partner rolls their eyes at dinner and forget it. It's World War III, right? It happens all the time. Oh my God, I cannot tell you how many times I've explained this to couples and they'll go, holy crap, that's what happens to us. That's why it's so important to write down the number of days in between the arguments. And what we want to do, obviously, is extend those days, right? But adrenaline is so powerful that if we don't learn tools like emotional regulation, I'll give you an example. You guys start to get into a disagreement, and one of them, after about 2 or 3 minutes, one says, time out. You know what? I've got to walk outside for an hour. I've got to get in the car and go for a ride. I can feel my adrenaline pumping. I can feel my heart rate racing. I can see the same things happening with you. The only way we're going to decrease the amount we argue is if one of us walks away. And I'm being dead serious. It is the most powerful thing to do. It's not disrespectful. It's just that you're wise enough to know, after being together and seeing these arguments regularly, that someone's got to have the knowledge to stop, to disengage. And then you can say, I'm going to go out for 2 hours. I'll come back. And can we talk about this tomorrow night? I think we're too riled up. Now, you do that enough and you'll start to chop down that adrenaline addiction cycle. In other words, the craving for the argument, the craving for the brain to get that rush of adrenaline will start to decrease because you're not in that state as frequently as you were, let's say, a month ago. It can take a while to titrate down those arguments to get them to be once a month or whatever it might be. And then, of course, the last thing I'll talk about is just logically looking at, what are we arguing about? Is it even worth it? Is there a way to solve it and get it the hell out of here? And that's, of course, a lot of fun to get to that point. Listen, I've been doing this for 45 years. I can help any couple in the world that wants to have some change in their life if they're arguing. Reach out to me at talkdavid.com. Reach out to me. There's 5-6 books there for free you can look at. But to do this work, to shatter the arguing, to shatter the adrenaline addiction cycle, to shatter the pattern in the subconscious is possible. And I'm there. And I've been doing it for 45 years, and I'd love to help you. There's nothing better than living in a peaceful home. And there's nothing worse than living in a home filled with arguments. Reach out to me at talkdavid.com. Let's make that change now. There's no better time than today. And I'm in your corner. Have a beautiful day.